This is the beginning of This Is Your Life, Donald Nelson and Howard Jensen. And we just want to, we're going to put it all to... That's it. Baba Walters doesn't do this. How do you control it? But what we're hoping to do is put things together because we have always wanted to know the background of our parents and how they got together. And we hope that soon, with what we have to talk with everybody today, they'll be put together, not right now, but that maybe somewhere, maybe 10 or 20 years down the line, the children or the grandchildren might really enjoy what we have to tell you here today. So what I'd like to just do is just a slight interview at the beginning, and Don, if you would just kind of look that way, and when were you born, Don?
I thought she was going to ask me my name.
Chad was getting his answer.
Is this one of those Civil War answers?
Are they all yes and no?
Multiple choice, Bob.
This is serious. This is serious. Thank God for editing.
Well,
January 19th, 1927.
okay, and you were born where?
Pipestone, Minnesota.
Ask who he is. Fine. And now you went to school in Pipestone, and you lived in Pipestone, I understand,
I
all
went
your
to
life.
school in Pipestone.
You lived in Pipestone.
I went to school in Pipestone. We had an Indian school in our Pipestone.
Okay.
High school.
That is,
Grade school.
and you graduated from Pipestone High School, didn't
Pipestone
you,
High
huh?
School, 1944. I graduated from Pipestone.
Oh, okay, fine. And Howard, where were you born?
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
That's
Sioux
not-
Falls, South
And then you went to where?
Dakota. Pipestone, Minnesota. That where it all happened.
Now, this is for posterity.
All right. Is that his name?
Okay, and then you moved to Pipestone.
Yeah, Pipestone.
Okay.
That's where it's down now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and what I really want to point out, and I think it's so coincidental, that Donald Nelson and Howard
Have you been swapping all
were
this?
really good friends growing up. And I think one really neat little incident between Howard and Don that maybe you could relate was about when you and Donald decided to run away from home.
Yes, his mother reminded us of that many times. The time that I don't know what the occasion was, but we decided we were both being abused and we're going to run away from home. We packed a suitcase and we left. And we didn't get very far because we weren't allowed to go across the street.
How old were you then?
3.
It was between 3 and 5.
You guys
It
knew
might
each
have
other
been 3.
that long?
Yeah, Howard.
I didn't realize that.
I lived
Half
in
a
the middle
block.
of the block, and Howard lived at the end of the block across the street. And Howard's mother would let him come over to our house, but he couldn't go back without my mother calling his mother and telling her that
No
he
kidding.
crossed the street. Yeah.
And I think you moved to where?
Pelican Rapids, Minnesota.
That's fine, and that's where we met. And in the meantime, we were married, and you went to where? The University of Minnesota, didn't you?
Yeah, the big M. The big M.
And Don, you graduated from what college?
The University of North Dakota,
Uh-huh.
in
Yeah.
Grand Forks, North Dakota,
That's
in the
right.
Great River, Red River Valley.
Good.
Yes,
We know
a
that.
Great Red River Valley.
North of Fargo, North Dakota.
North of Fargo,
Yes,
North
right.
Dakota.
Right, south
Yeah,
of
south of
Canada,
Winnipeg.
farther north.
I think one of the things that everyone is just so surprised is how Joanne and Don met. And I think that was
dating the white
fate. And maybe you could say a few words about how you met.
A few words.
Leave out the part about the ladies.
I stopped in Pelican Rapids to visit an old college chum of mine by the name of Clarence Pierce. Speak up. And while I was with Clarence, I was going to stay there one day and then travel on. And Clarence told me that an old friend of mine from Pipestone was in Pelican Rapids and that his name was Howard Jensen. So he called Howard. Howard and Betty were married at the time, and they were both in Pelican on vacation. So Howard came over to Clarence's house, and we had a cup of coffee. We hadn't seen each other for quite a few years at that time. I had just gotten out of the Army from during the Korean conflict. And so anyhow, Howard then said that his sister-in-law was home for a wedding. In fact, it was Marcy's wedding, as I recall. And so that evening, or the day after, whichever it was, we went on our first date together to Detroit Lakes. And that's how we met. We met as a result of Howard and Betty introducing us.
Isn't that just like true confessions?
But let me tell you, you know,
This is my love.
I know, but let me tell about Annie Betty. We all know Annie Betty, and so that night she's always promoting something, okay? So she said, "Oh, Don, before you go back to Pipestone, why don't you come over and have breakfast with us?" And Don, who always loved to eat, said, "Oh, sure, I'll come over." Well, we got home. And I said, "Good night, I'll see you at noon." And Betty said, "Well, remember, Don's coming over for breakfast." And I said, "I didn't invite him, you did. You get up and feed him." And she said, "Well, no, you gotta get up, you gotta go up, because, you know, he's coming over." I said, "No way, I'm not gonna get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is my vacation, I'm sleeping in." Well, breakfast, okay? He's over at 8 o'clock in the morning. Betty's waking me up. She said, "Come on, Don's downstairs, Don's downstairs." I said, "Well, you take care of it." No, you. So I got up, and we came down, and Betty said, "What would you like for breakfast?" And he said, "Oh, I'd like to have eggs." And he said, "How many? 6?" and Betty was saying, "Well, you cook." I said, "I can't cook an egg."
I never. I don't do windows either.
And I sat there and I looked and I said, "Oh my God, 8 eggs?" I should have known better, and that's the way he's eaten all his life. 3 times as much as anybody else.
Good. And of course, as you know, Howard and I were high school sweethearts. We went together 3 years, and then we broke up, and no one else was have us, so we got back together again. But do you remember the first time we started going together, Howard?
Oh, yeah. That was on a bus, sophomore year, wasn't it? Coming back from a basketball game.
And I was the only girl, 2 girls in the pep band, and I played B-flat alto saxophone.
I was no dummy.
So
I'm one of the 2 girls.
Because I want one that
Howard was the captain of the football team at that time, and the captain of the basketball
Not at
team.
that time, no.
But the
No.
president of the school.
I was riding the bench.
Okay, all right. But anyway,
I had lots of time for girls.
but that's how we met, wasn't it?
Right. That's it.
And now this is just kind of a short interview, and after this is over, we're going to do private interviews with all the kids and things of what you might remember about your dad that your children might like to see. I think it's really important, and I would like to have known what happened in our background. I hope this isn't boring to you.
Yes.
That's all right.
That's all right, it
You
is.
spoke for a lot of people.
But maybe somewhere down the line, I hope that this will be something you may remember. And we'll cut the interview now, and we'll go to each and every one of you, okay?